Hey, and I'm sure there are some people out there that were unsure if they would ever hear the bugle call on the podcast again, but here we are. And this begins season 2 of Cohort W. Now, in today's episode, our incredible guest will share some personal and professional experience, perhaps a little mentorship and insight as a senior warrant officer for the AG Corps, specifically serving as one of only 2 CW5 420 Charlies in the United States Army. The senior warrant officer will then examine how this insight should ultimately influence action, development, and education within their corps, field, and the greater cohort. The conversation this season is directed at leader development, talent management, and what they are doing to support the Army for large-scale combat operations. Finally, during this second season, I'm sure many will definitely enjoy this continuous segment. All Cohort W guests will have an opportunity to share a favorite anecdote from their career as a senior warrant officer. Now, I feel it is significant to note that this episode is especially unique, as our guest is both the creator of Cohort W and last year's Warrant Officer Historical Foundation Fellow. That being said, today I am joined by CW5 Russ Houser. Thank you so much for your time today, Russ.
Thank you. It's a pleasure to be here.
Okay. Can you share with the audience a little about yourself? Your rank, name, general information, and to include how long you have been a warrant officer.
Sure. I feel that a fair amount of the audience will probably know a good amount about me, but my name is Russ Houser. Currently, I am Chief Warrant Officer 5, and I am the, I'll get to that in a little bit. I've been a warrant officer for 17 years. This coming July, it'll be 17 years. I grew up in a very small town in northeastern Pennsylvania, and my brother went in the Army when I was in 9th grade, and I think that was probably the biggest influence on me for joining the Army 3 years later. So I joined in 1987, right out of high school. I enlisted as a 02 Delta, which then at that time was a French horn player. I had a very wonderful first assignment, but I was committed to just doing one and done, so I did. Got out, went to the University of Massachusetts, Amherst, and ended up with a degree in chemistry and music performance. Took some time off from academia, and after about a year, in 1996, came back in the Army. During that whole time, I had stayed in the National Guard in Massachusetts and New Hampshire. So I went back in as a French horn player. And then in 2004, I was selected for Sergeant First Class and Warrant Officer in the same month in November. And I selected Warrant Officer and went to candidate school in 2005 and went up through the ranks. And here I am. So along the way, I finished my master's and doctorate. And I'm just trying to continue to be all I can be.
But so you're MOS now, MOS title, but what should really be interesting is your duty position at this time.
Alrighty. So I am a 420 Charlie. That is a Bandmaster. And my duty position is Army Band's proponency officer. And I do need to clarify at least one thing. There are 2 420 Charlie W5s active duty. And then there's one each in Compo 2 and 3. And I don't want to overlook those peers. They are very wonderful, excellent peers to work with, and I'm grateful for their counsel and their insight. And they are people I discuss our issues with regularly.
Thank you for that. And you tell everyone what your daily work as a senior warrant officer and specifically as a leader in your corps involves. And then how does that work serve to the betterment and the support of both your branch and the Army as a whole?
Sure. So to summarize, my daily work is direct input to the commandants at both the Army School of Music and the Adjutant General School on Army Band concerns. And mostly these are force management concerns or concerns that overlap with force management. And the betterment to the branch and the Army comes from examining challenges or opportunities cooperatively and iteratively regarding organization and allocation in the various components, in addition to how we train. And this affects how we in the Adjutant General Corps support the sustainment warfighting function and the Army conceptually and operationally in LISCO and MDO theaters in Pacific and Europe especially, and for communicating the Army's message.
Now, force management is not a topic that many warrant officers probably engage with regularly, but it sounds like that provides a mechanism for very specific initiatives or focal points. And I'm almost certain those focal points for you as working for Proponent, you're honed in on leader development and talent management. Well, with respect to leader development and talent management, what would you like to communicate to the warrant officers in your branch and the leaders they support?
Well, sure. I'll get back just to that topic in a second. A lot of my work does look at structures for the field. So that is one thing. But my interest, especially with people, does focus on these concerns of leader development and talent management. And I think one of the things that you're going to hear, this is my prognostication for the course of season 2, is that the current Army discourse focused on Army 2030 and the publication very soon of the new FM 3.0 that takes some of the conceptual multi-domain work and puts it into doctrine, especially with the division as the unit of action. I think that's going to drive a lot of leader development and talent management for this coming year, whether or not people are tracking that and what that actually looks like. So for me, what that leader development looks like right now is just socializing these concepts to my team. So they're not going into battalion or brigade staff meetings, hearing these concepts as people who are sustainment warfighting folks and not tracking everything that's going on. So I want them to begin understanding that. And this will probably come back later in the discussion. So I want them to know what is happening at the big Army level. And then also to have a fair understanding of what all of those possible implications could be. So that's a big challenge. For me to begin socializing these ideas, I've begun monthly MS Teams meetings with the active duty 420 Charlies, where we take everybody's temperature, so to say, what's going on, what's the discussion, ideas bubble up from the bottom that people want to talk about, and we try to keep this under an hour. As you know, I like formalized meetings that only last so long, and discuss what their topics are. And then at the end, I'll push down on some of the topics or push out on some of the topics that I've been talking about. But I also try to reach out to Compo 2 and 3 peers and share with them what's going on with a revised proponent brief that I have. So socializing all these ideas right now is sort of where I am in my tenure in this new position that I have.
We really kind of covered, and for everyone listening, both Russ and myself are going off a prepared set of talking points, and we really kind of covered what was going to come up next. And so we want to skip down to education or training. What kind of education or training, whether technical or Common Core, do you see as being relevant and impactful to the development of your branch or corps, or even warrant officers in general? And you being an educator, I'm certain that you're very passionate about this. And if you could explain why you feel this way, because it's passion about education resonates not just with current students, but future students.
Sure. And this is a great question. So, as the smallest cohort of the three, I think there's definitely room for a small amount of agitators like myself and others out there who are really big on Army education and education. And I say agitator in a tender, loving way, to really push ourselves to be as educated as we can. The Army doesn't always do this formally for us, and that's no secret and that's no criticism. So I definitely am encouraging everybody all the time to seek their own educational direction and goals, and then apply it to the Army. So, and I think that one of the things that we can do as a cohort is really foster a greater sense, a growing sense of warrant officers who are doctrine junkies. And again, I mean that in a good way, who speak Army, who solve problems, in Army methodical ways, who are self-aware and empathetic, and who are, from their own education, master's and doctoral level researchers who are fluent in quantitative and qualitative analyses, who also look beyond doctrine to society and science for answers. I've got two texts that I generally recommend to people. One is Sociology of Military, and the other is Handbook of Operations Research. And again, those are the beginnings of looking beyond doctrine for how we get to quantitative and qualitative solutions. If we, as the smallest cohort, foster these concepts behind character, presence, and intellect in the smallest cohort, I think we can influence the Army profoundly. So, and again, that's just my crazy world view, but this comes from a place that I believe that the purpose of education in the Army is to make the world, in the U.S. Army, is to make the world a better place. So that's where I come from on that, and that's where my passion stems from.
So going back toward talent management and obviously working proponent and engaging in force management, you're just knee deep in the concept of talent management and organizational design every day. And so with respect to talent management of personnel, and that being such a major undertaking, how are you and those in your technical specialty and your core approaching the recruitment of subsequent management of new talent? Because the Army and the Warrant Officer Cohort is definitely looking to always recruit new NCOs into the various technical fields. So how are you approaching that?
Great question. My purview is really limited to the accession and development of 420 Charlies. In Army bands, we have a wonderful, small, active core of recruiting liaisons at each of the brigades who bring people into the Army. So enlisted soldiers. So that's that's not so much my domain. But for the warrant officer applicants, we have a fairly robust we have a fairly robust screening process. Everyone has to demonstrate technical competency on the podium as a musical leader, which means in sort of Army speak, they have to be able to have a vision of a musical piece and then execute very quickly the training requirements to achieve their vision, even if it's not fully achieved, achieve progress toward that vision. And they have to demonstrate that within 30 minutes over several pieces of music, several different styles of music. If they have demonstrated that sufficiently, they are invited to a live audition where they get to demonstrate that, again, with music they have seen only for a very short amount of time, followed by 4 more assessments in writing, in analysis, in briefing, and then in interpersonal relationships. So it's a very complex process, and we have a good amount of screeners, and I'm talking about 6 or 7 screeners typically, mostly at the senior level, 1 at the junior level, and we assess the performance and discuss it. And this, to me, is sort of based off of, I think, one of the papers I shared with you on faculty interreliability. So more people looking at somebody gives a better view of the overall number of performances that we've seen and a better unified vision. And we do this to make sure that we are reducing risk, because our people, our 14 Charlies, will literally go into command within a month or 2 of graduating WOBC. So we want to make sure we've got the right person picked out. So when that time comes and they are literally in that command position as a WO1, they are that right person. As they go up the chain, we keep a fairly robust detail of the types of assignments they have been at, the duration of those assignments, in addition to their enlisted assignments. So how many deployments, how many divisions, how many generating force, how many broadening opportunities. And so as I manage the warrant assignments, helping people figure out their career goals and discussing that with them, just trying to make sure that they have got the most breadth possible, and that would be easily seen on any board that they would be going to. So those board members can quickly see that they've got the typical assignments that they should have. So additionally, the Adjutant General Cohort is implementing Project Athena in other in formal PME, and again in these monthly meetings, we have this discussion period where I ask people to reflect on what's going on, what their challenges are. So hopefully fostering that self-awareness too.
Talent management for specific roles, especially at senior levels, is not always understood. Can you comment to how a warrant officer is vetted in your branch, specifically your field, and selected for specific roles such as yours?
Sure. I really cannot speak to how persons in the past were selected. And I can identify who those persons were. And what I can also say is they were, as far back as I can remember, they were a very smart group of people. There have always been a small number of master warrant officer level selectees, and describing that criteria has not been necessarily revealed to me. However, there have been 2 typical paths that people have taken to get to this particular job that I'm in. And that is a straight command for their entire career. And also those of us who have wandered pretty far from the command path into a broadening path. So this year, 2 of us were selected for W5. My good friend, Jim Betancourt, and myself. And Jim is truly an incredibly talented person who has been on the command path, absolutely gifted, brilliant musician, clear thinker. And he's just a all-around great, direct guy. And his path was that command path, from the time he was W1 here at Fort Jackson with the 282nd Army Band through, I believe, 1AD in Germany and deployment. and to some really big roles. To right now, he's in Shape. He is in the Shape band in Belgium. Let me clarify that. Versus my work as a doctrine developer at the School of Music, and then doctrine writer for WOAC at Army University, and finally teacher at the Career College. So I can pretty much bin people into those two different groups over the past several decades that I have been in. And part of it is timing, and part of it is a will to take this job. However, at this point, my own belief going forward is that, and this is getting into your next question, and I apologize for that. For somebody who wants this job, from here on out, as long as I'm in this job, if you don't have a clue about what this job is coming forward, going forward, I'm giving them out. If you don't have a clue, that's partly my fault, but I am pushing downstream fairly routinely the things that I'm doing and the things that you need to know. And again, those things are force management and staff work and what other warrant officers do. So there's your two for answer.
Yeah, thank you. That definitely was a 2-4 answer, and for the listeners, the follow on and what Russ got after was, what do you tell that W3 or W4 that wants to rise to the position that's now held by a senior warrant officer? And Russ definitely laid it out. I love learning. I'm a lifelong learner. You definitely know that about me, and I certainly know that about you. But many have said that experience is the best teacher. So as both a CW5 and a senior warrant officer, what experienced success or even failure have you learned the most from in your career?
This is a really great and a difficult question. And I guess probably it needs to begin with just having a very strong sense of self-awareness. And that self-awareness is not just, oh, look, I can do things better. It's, oh, look, I can do things better, and then acting on that. So I've learned from my many failures in personal relations, interpersonal relations, and with technology. And what I've learned is I tend to be fairly pokey in the first year of a new job as I really untangle everything that's going on. Every new job I walk into feels like a total social mystery to me. And it's a challenge to get myself figured out and get myself squared away. This is not ideal by any means to the Army, and especially for this new job that I'm in. But it takes a while to untangle that. And then after that second year is often fairly productive and healthy for me. And then that third year, I get bored. So knowing this about myself has already helped me figure out my goal and my timeline here, so I can begin training that next W5 selectee behind me and those newest W1s, and getting ready for those 420 Charlie accessions that we're going to be doing. So whenever that door is open for somebody else to walk into my job, they are ready or readier than I was for this. So that experience, success or failure, that's from looking at myself over the long run and seeing, what are the patterns that I've repeated over and over, and not really being negative or down on myself for them, but just recognizing how I work and trying to be as gentle with myself as possible and get over some of that German American disciplinary and perfectionist type thing that I grew up with, making the most of it and focusing on people as I go throughout this job. So I think that's the experienced success and failure sort of all in one for you.
No, that's fantastic, and having the honor to know you as both a friend and a peer. I'm sure you can imagine. I'm definitely smiling over here because I have benefited from your dedication to uh, preparing the one who follows behind you. So for those listening, I was fortunate enough to follow CW5 Houser as the communications department head at the Career College. And I have never seen such a more diligent and dedicated professional, nor have I ever received a more incredible handoff. So I think what this really says is that, the leaders that climb and continue to climb are the ones who take time to really assess themselves. But do you have an interesting or formative anecdote from your career that you would like to share with the audience? It could be funny, could be inspirational in your development as both an officer or even a senior warrant officer.
Well, I'm not sure I have a specific anecdote, but I remember very small bits of information that shape my thinking. I'm a simple guy, and I wanted to share just a couple of these sort of funny things, maxims or aphorisms along the way that I've heard. And one came from 1987 when I was in basic training. I had a drill sergeant. It was probably like day 4 or 5 of basic training, and we're in the day room or the sweat box, depending on the time of day it was and how angry they were at us. And comes up in this gravelly old voice. He says, "Privates, you have to understand. This is the Army, I know, but Army doesn't run itself, and Congress giveth and Congress taketh away." And so here I am, 37 years later, sort of still in that world where, and again, this is not any slam on anybody up there in Congress. This is just a point where, where budget rules the Army. And I, now 37 years later, it's like, oh my gosh, drill sergeant, please talk to me. I get it. So there's one. Another one, like I said earlier, hearing Jane Fleener, the Dean of College of Education at North Carolina State, at a graduation, say the purpose of education is to make the world a better place. That was a transformative statement for me in my own personal and educational life. And I absolutely love Dean Fleener. She's great. Not too recently, I heard somebody say, write the story you're afraid to write. So that gives me courage always. And I think, my own battles with don't ask, don't tell, and my own see into trying to improve my own mental health. Those are lots of things along the way. And so I try to get out there and share all of those things with anybody who not is willing to listen, but to those who I can help in those particular ideas or in those concepts. So that there is a lot of stuff out there that is inspirational to me, that affects how I work as a leader, but it all kind of gets wrapped up into what I've said before to you. My goal is to be that loving leader that I need to be, and that's sort of where I need to go. So that's that's sort of where it all develops. All the development goes to.
I think that was amazing, and you. First off, that drill sergeant sounds like a bit of an oracle. And so for any young soldiers who may be listening to this podcast that are not too far removed from your drill sergeant, maybe look back and think, what were some of the things they said? I mean, it could later come in handy. I'd like to tell all the listeners, thank you for your time today. CW5, Dr. Russell Houser. And, I think what is fantastic about this is, initially the first part of this episode, it was so great to hear a senior warrant officer not just talk doctrine, but talk about the influence of policy and the various programs that are out there that shape the wonderful Army that we serve in. And, just sharing the mentorship that you have and so freely give with those that you always seek to serve. You, sir, are a selfless leader, and I am very grateful to you. And thank you again for sharing that time with all of us and demonstrating leadership in your branch and how that leadership can ultimately contribute to meet the doctrinal requirements of the Army for both the current and future fight. This has truly been a pleasure.